Welcome everybody, welcome. This is Destination Bradford, a live podcast Talkaoke. But what does it mean? Who knows? It'll be soon revealed what it actually means. But meanwhile, we've got loads of people joining from all corners of Yorkshire and beyond, I think. So my name is Margot. I'm just sitting here in the middle of the table. Behind me is Mikey, and we are here in the People Speak headquarters. We've got Rick here, whom you can't see, and we've got Laura, whom you also can't see, but they're responsible for everything that's happening backstage and all the illustrations that will be coming up on the screen. But I just want to get a sound check from everybody who joined. Nina, give us a shout. Hello. Hi, Nina.
Oh, hi, I'm Nina. Yes, I'm from Bradford.
You're from Bradford. Amazing. And Alexandra. Hey, Alex.
Hello.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm loving the background. I think we've had the same background when we spoke before, and I was equally as impressed. Wonderful. Welcome, Alex. Sue, hello.
Yeah, from Bradford.
You are from Bradford as well. Amazing. After all these adventures yesterday, we managed to have you here with us.
Thank you.
That's amazing. We also have Chris. Chris, are you going to stick your camera on, or are you going to stay kind of in the shadow? And he left us with that. Chris, give us a shout when you're ready to speak, and I'm going to move on to the next person. I've got a mysterious JM460.
That's me. Hi there.
Hello.
It's Helena. My name is Helena. I can't get you on my iPad, so I'm on the phone.
That is more than fine. Did you say your name was Nina?
Halina.
Halina, okay. Halina, I have you now renamed, so I can call you by your actual name. And we've got Greg, but I also think it may not be Greg, it may be the Queen of Yorkshire herself joining us today. Can you give us a sound check?
Yes, it is the Queen, herself,
It is the Queen, and she's
known as the Queen in my ass,
Right, and the Queen is joining us from the toilet, I can see, but it's a palatial, beautiful place. Thank you, Greg. Should I call you Greg, or should I call you the Queen?
You can call me Queenie, I just need to flush the toilet.
No problem. I'm just gonna call you like this. Wonderful. And we've got Laura, we've got Sue, yes, we've got, who else we've got? We've got Maria's iPad, so that's the Ukrainian club, I guess. Is that right? Can you just confirm that for me?
Hello, hi.
Who is this mysterious person?
It's Maria from Bradford. I'm not particular. I presume there's somebody else representing the Ukrainian club. Although my dad was Ukrainian. And my mum is Italian, so I'm a little bit of a combination.
Right, so you come with all your kind of wonderful mixture of heritages. So Maria, can I ask you, because we've got a couple of Marias on the call, what's your initial? What's the Maria surname?
It's Maria P.
P, Maria P. Yeah. Wonderful, thank you, Maria, thank you for joining.
Do you want the full name? Do you want the full name?
No, it's fine.
You're all right with that?
We've got Maria P.
I can change it on here. I'm not sure how to change it, but if I can,
have a go. But otherwise, we have you. And we've got Stephanie. Stephanie, hello. Do you want to give us a sound check?
Hello.
Hello. Where are you calling from, Stephanie?
I'm actually in Hereford. So not Bradford, but originally from Bradford.
Okay, well, you're very welcome to be here. Thank you so much. And then we've got George. Hello, George. Can you give us...
Hello from Canada.
From Canada, my days. Wow, you've had quite a trek, haven't you? But thank you so much for joining. What's the time in Canada right now?
It's 8 o'clock in the morning.
Wow, this deserves a round of applause and it deserves a massive coffee as well. Thank you so much, Greg. Really appreciate you being here. I think, Maria D, welcome.
Hello.
Hello, nice to see you again.
Hello.
You sound beautifully loud and clear, so this is great.
Got my voice.
Yeah, we've got your voice. It sounds beautiful. Okay, Chris is saying on the chat the camera isn't working. We are sorry to hear that, but we hope to hear your voice. Do you want to just give us a little sound check, Chris?
Hello.
Hello. Great.
I'll just restart my computer and then hopefully the video will work.
Yeah, go for it. I also just realized I've got people on the second page of my Zoom. Sorry this is taking a little bit longer, but I just want to make sure that everybody's voice sounds good and everybody's happy. I also have Maria, just Maria on her own. Is this a new Maria that we've got here? Maria just on her own. No.
Yes, it could be. She messaged me from this morning. She called, Maria Kravec is a maiden name. I gave her this about a couple of hours ago. I think that could be her, but she's in Austria at the moment.
Okay.
I don't know what the link would be like from there, but I did send all this to her.
Okay, so Maria,
Hello,
what?
Maria.
Oh, hello, Maria.
Yes.
We can hear you.
It's Maria in Austria. Yeah.
Beautiful, Maria. What initial shall I give you?
K.
Maria K from Austria. This is getting really international, you guys. I don't know how you feel about it. I'm pretty excited. So thank you, Maria K, for the sound check. And Hania, can we hear from you, Hania? Hello, Hania. Hania, do you want to put your camera on? In fact, anyone who hasn't put the camera on but feels like they want to, just go for it. It's very nice for me to see your faces. So if you can put your cameras on, please do. Hania, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Bradford.
Excellent. So we've got big Bradford representation. We like that. Okay, you guys, I think this is us. This is us kind of doing the so-called intro. I will just say that today's session of Destination Bradford live podcast Talkaoke is recorded and it's also going live to Facebook. You will be able to hear it or watch it back on Facebook after 2 o'clock today, and then we will be turning today's session into more of a podcast. We may just do some edits here and there so it looks as slick as it can be in the age of Zoom. And so this is the plan. I will just say the Destination Bradford in itself is a project that myself and Adam, can you give us a quick hello?
Hello.
So this is Adam. Adam, where are you calling from?
Croydon. So sadly not very glamorous, but there you go.
Well, we love Croydon here. In fact, you know, as you can see, it's very international and Croydon is part of that picture. So a little word of explanation about Destination Bradford. I think everybody knows a little bit about it, but it's a project that myself and Adam had been working on with Bradford Producing Hub, who's funding this whole thing, making it possible. And it was originally to create a performance, an immersive theatre show that talks about the stories of Poles and Ukrainians in Bradford and celebrates those stories. But then one thing we didn't predict was COVID. I don't know who predicted it. We didn't. So since then, we've been doing things online, talking to people, and the idea of today's event came about. So today we're teaming up with the People Speak and Art Collective from East London, and we will be turning today's conversation into a sort of archive of all the stories. But first and foremost, it's a conversation. So Talkaoke. I'll explain very quickly what Talkaoke is. It is a pop-up talk show. It's kind of television style, except that I have no opinions as a person in the middle. I am entitled to 0 opinions. I'm able to ask you questions, but it's going to be up to every single one of you to throw subjects out, speak your mind, and let's see where that takes us. So it could be a very interesting journey, so feel free to chat. Just for a little bit of housekeeping, today's session is captioned, so if you would like to see almost subtitles on the bottom of your on your screen, you are welcome to use the link in the chat. Lisa from Bradford Producing Hub, she's going to post the link now. What's going to happen if you click it, it will open a box in your browser and the subtitles will appear there. We've got Louise and Laura captioning the whole thing for us today, so big round of applause to them. And also, so this is just to kind of make things easier. If you want to speak, raise your hand, a physical hand, or the button at the bottom of your screen. There's like a raised hand button, and that way we'll make sure that we don't overlap and everybody has their time to speak. From the housekeeping things, is there anything else I missed out, team? I'm looking to the team. To anyone?
That's what I think. That's the only thing we need to
I think you're right. I think I've been chatting a lot. So, okay, Destination Bradford, representing Polish and Ukrainian stories. What stories should we be telling? Crack on. Who wants to kick us off? What should we be talking about today? Okay, Helena here in the corner. You're going to kick us off. Go for it.
Well, as someone who grew up in Bradford, who was born to Polish parents, I think I speak on most of the community of our age, but also the Ukrainians, the Hungarians, all the Central East Europeans who settled in Bradford and whose stories have been, despite the best efforts, have not actually been publicised. I've tried on numerous occasions, we'll get the odd press cutting for some sort of special occasion, and it's almost like a flash in the pan. And even now I'm on a project that Bradford Council has started following, the statues debacle about the African Caribbean and the Windrush generation. Mm-hmm. Well, there were Polish people who also came on the Windrush, and they're not even mentioned. They're starting about who should we represent, who should we remember, because all these communities have actually made contribution to life in Bradford since the late 40s, when they all started coming over. It was our parents and grandparents who worked in the factories, who worked on the building sites, who worked in menial tasks, despite whatever their qualifications were. There were people highly qualified who ended up working in, and I have no disrespect for menial tasks. Everybody has to have a job and everybody, contributes. But I think particularly the Polish, Ukrainian, and the other Central East European communities have had such a low profile as if they've never existed, until 2004, when Poland joined the EU. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden they started talking about new communities. Well, the Polish community, the Ukrainian community, the Hungarian, they weren't new. They were here from the 1940s. Mm-hmm. And, it's something that is, as you can hear, quite close and passionate to my heart. Me personally, I've had a great life. I've got a good life now. But I think we owe it to our parents and forebears who sacrificed so much, who gave all of us a life. They never got a penny. They didn't ask for any support from the government or from, in fact, they were probably too proud to even accept it when it was offered. And I think it's their stories that need to be told.
Okay, so Helena, thank you so much for this. I think you gave us a really kind of layered and really rich opening gambit here. So I'm going to summarize it in a way that, are we, how do we make sure that these stories are not just temporary, like you said, a flash in a pan? Is it about maybe joining the conversation about statues? Who are the people we should be shouting about in Bradford and maybe even in the UK, people from the Polish and Ukrainian diaspora? Or is there even indeed a status of who is considered more of an important migrant, whose story is more told? Are the menial workers don't have the same profile? And do you agree that we owe this to our past, or should we be moving on, rolling with times? You gave us really a lot there, Helena. Who wants to pick up on any of these points? Raise your hand, physical or otherwise. Hal Fi.
Okay.
Yeah?
Yes, everything Helena says, I agree with, because I was also brought up in Bradford. But I think we should remember what happened in the past. We should never forget that, because we are a product of what our parents went through, all the suffering they went through. But I think also it's good to talk about the next generation, my generation, Helena's generation, what we actually did, what we have actually achieved, and what we are passing on to the next generation. our parents, in my case, if I can just give you a sort of a very brief outline, my father was born in 1913 and he was deported to Siberia in 1940. So he would have been about 20 years old and he was in one of the labor camps. In 1942, then he was evacuated to Persia, which was then Iran, through the Persian corridor. And then he joined the Polish Corps, which was the Polish Second Corps under General Anders. So I have only just recently found out how difficult that trek was for my father. I didn't know about it before because I think, like a lot of parents, they did not talk about what they went through. So we, of course, being the modern generation at the time, as we considered ourselves, we just didn't want to know about the war. So it's only now that through the internet, I am discovering what happened in Persia, how the Polish people settled there, and how my father trained in Iraq, in Palestine, in Egypt, and ended up in Italy. So he spent 2 years there. Of course, the Battle of Monte Cassino, the Battle of Ancona, Bologna. So all this suffering, we didn't know about that. And that's where he met my mother. So my mother was Italian. So I have that advantage of having those wonderful three cultures, the English, Polish, and Italian, which has enriched my life. And it's enriched my professional life as well. So I think we should talk, we must never forget the past. That is so important because that's our heritage. But let's also talk about what we have done, what we have contributed also to Britain.
Okay, so again, this is like another really great example of lots, of lots of different points. So I'm going to kind of pick out some of the main threads that you put out there, Hel, and that's about, are we talking enough about what different generations have done to kind of popularize the stories of their family, of their communities? Do we even want to talk about a war? Is that something, that the current generation, the younger generation, wants to talk about, is comfortable talking about? Is it important to keep on opening the wounds of maybe sometimes painful memories, like you say, your parents didn't want to talk about it. And then somewhere in between of that, there's, an opportunity for love and relationship to grow out in somewhere in, in another part of the country, and which kind of mixes the cultures even more. So, where do we want to take this? Are we talking about the history enough? Are we reiterating? Is anyone from the kind of most recent generation, anybody's got any views? There was some talk on 2004 migrants kind of coming over and almost inventing the, in inverted commas, the Polish community. And what it is in the Ukrainian community. Is any of this kind of resonating in the Ukrainian community? Any of these themes? Who wants to take that to the next level? Maria D, go Maria.
Yeah, well, the Ukrainian community, like the other communities, have got a long history, and we grew up in this community, and because we had no family as such here, they were all back in the Ukraine, we just became sort of one big community of family and friends. And we've got the Ukrainian school, which was started in 1953. So we all went through Ukrainian school and were taught by the older generation. And we were taught all that the Ukrainians had gone through. And their idea was to pass it all down to us and then us to pass it on to our children. So, we've all been through the schooling, and the school still does exist now. Maria and myself, we're doing it online, but it's it's gone on for so long. I know the numbers are down, but it still does exist. And we've got the Ukrainian club, and we're trying our best to keep the culture going. But I think it's very important that they do learn about what went on in the past, because it was a hard life. Every one of them have got a different story to tell. and we'd exchange these facts with each other, and some of them are horrific stories, really. And we've been through the Holodomor, which we commemorate every year. That was the famine in Ukraine, caused in 1932 to 1933, by Stalin. And since we've been commemorating that, it's very important, not just for us, but the English community as well, to know what we've been going through. Because we are part of Bradford, and we used to have the Captive Nations Committee, which went on for decades, and we all used to take part once a year. We had an annual festival where each country would dance and sing. We had a huge concert, usually at the Ukrainian club, because that was one of the biggest ones. And we felt we were all part of sort of one big family under Russian rule. But it's harder to pass on to our children and grandchildren. But they should learn about it. That's my point anyway, and we're still carrying on now, so we've got the school, we've got church, we're trying to educate so the next couple of generations from us. And luckily, there's a lot of them who do want to contribute, and they come down to the club, and we're doing all Ukrainian things to keep it, to keep the culture going.
Yeah, I think what this is really wonderful what you brought to a conversation that is new. You mentioned the school, but also what I like about what you said is you talking about the school and the kind of the commemoration of Holodomor and other events which can be beneficial for the British community also to know about. And I think what it makes me think of is who is the British community in Bradford? That's just a question that I have. Who constitutes the British community? Is any of the British community present here? Mikey?
From Sue.
Sue, you have your raised hand? Yes, go on. But very great points, Maria. Thank you so much for this.
Yeah, thank you, Maria. It sparked off some thoughts for me. I'm here as doing a bit of research for myself, but I'm part of the Irish diaspora. My mother was Irish, and I'm looking at sort of developing a project to understand any kind of parallels and links between the Polish, the Central European diaspora and the Irish. There's some immediate obvious ones, but obviously, the obvious ones are the obvious ones. But one of the issues for myself as the second generation Irish, and I don't know, just throw this one in, is that my mother was had very ambivalent attitude to her culture and the reasons that she personally left, which was slightly different to you. It was layered, which meant she never ever discussed Ireland. She was very strong Irish accent, and it caused issues for our family during the Troubles in the 70s and 80s. We were sort of the focus of some responses and things, and she kind of had it was a backlash. So she did not pass on her Irishness, for want of a better word, to me at all. And it's only since she died quite a long time ago, unfortunately, that I have reconnected and know now that I'm part of this very large family and this culture. And it's this, for me, is a sort of journey to kind of try to understand both generally diaspora, but also my mother's reasons and sort of her feelings. And she rejected Catholicism and was running away from all sorts of things, and kind of became a sort of bit of a Tory, Tories, Daily Mail reader, and sort of, but she'd come from very sort of quite
no, I think what you're saying, what you're sharing here, I think it's a very interesting subject. And again, you kind of give it you're giving an example of your family's Irish ancestry, but I wonder if there's anybody here who can relate to this. Do we, like it has been said before, do we owe our ancestors to talking about the history? Can we even have an ambivalent attitude towards our heritage? Is that even optional? Chris, you've got your hand up. I'm going to come straight to you.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, it's really interesting so far. I just want to pick up on Sue's comments, which are really interesting. I think something that I've just been thinking about this morning as I was preparing to come on here was this idea of maybe like intimate histories, and I think it sort of relates to what everyone's been talking about, which I suppose personal stories. And we often talk about these broad historical forces or political forces and things like that, whether it's religion or war and these things that shape our lives dramatically. But within that, everyone has their different experiences, and some people are religious, some people are atheists, even within so-called religious countries or, that kind of thing. And all those stories from those people can illuminate these patterns in very different ways. And it only helps to broaden our sort of understanding of, I suppose, like the human experience. And that's kind of really what I wanted to add. And it's really nice to see my cousin Carolina here. Yeah, I'm sure between the two of us, and we'd have loads of stuff to add in the sort of personal sense. But I don't want to go into that now.
That's a really great point. Go, Mikey.
Are we sort of looking at history sort of like down the wrong end of the telescope in a way, that we sort of like want to see these huge movements, but actually it's those personal stories that are much more graspable and much more kind of, in a way, what history should be about?
That's a really good question. I mean, should we be focusing on the history of Polish and Ukrainian communities in Bradford as an instance, as this big block, big, massive collective experience? Or is it actually more about zooming in on individuals like yourselves here on the call, like all of us here? Which one is the right, which one is the correct or more important story? Which one should we be telling? I just want to check, Her Majesty, did you have your hand up earlier, or was that just a wave to everyone?
It was just a gesture, but maybe I'll add something from my generation. I represent this massive immigration wave which came to UK after 2004 from Poland after joining the European Union. So you can hear in my accent, I'll obviously speak with a Polish accent. I wasn't brought up here. And okay. So, and I maybe I quickly tell my story. I'm approaching this whole thing because we've heard this, life histories, and they sound really, like sometimes tragic. And I'm approaching this whole thing from a more comical point of view, more comical approach, So I quickly tell my story. So I was like an ordinary Polish immigrant in West Yorkshire. And then there was this whole thing with referendum, Brexit referendum, and this whole thing got me really upset. And then there was also this whole thing about blaming Eastern Europeans or blaming immigrants, especially Eastern Europeans, for all the atrocities like bad economy, bad education, the state of NHS. And that put me on the verge of the mental illness. I've been on a mental breakdown. And basically, I started being delusional, and but at some point I thought, if they blame me for everything, I must be someone very influential and very important. How can I be responsible for all these things? And then I started thinking, I had this delusion, I must be someone very special. And then I said, yes, I'm the Queen. All right. So I started dressing up as the Queen. I was still, absolutely, away with fairies, and I started going out to town as the Queen, and and all these things, and and lots of adventures, happened, and so as you see, I'm quite a little bit better. I'm mentally quite stable at the moment, not 100%, but anyway, I finished with applying to. I developed this project. Then I applied for doing masters at Leeds Arts University. At the moment, I'm finishing in July, and I'm still working on this story, how the Polish immigrant became the Queen of Yorkshire or the Queen of whatever. Yeah, oh yeah.
Okay, so this is, thank you. Thank you, Her Majesty. Thank you so much, Greg, for sharing the story. And I think what you're kind of touching on there, I mean, you know, you're touching on lots of different things. You know, you touched on the representation of the most current wave of migrants. Are they, is it still the case? Are they still being blamed for everything that's going wrong in this country? Is humor, is performance the right way of responding? Can Queen of Yorkshire be, a way of dealing with, their trauma, or is it something that brings Brits and Poles and Ukrainians and Eastern Europeans together? Can we kind of come together around something that's quite comedic? Can history be told through that? I'm going to leave you with that, but I'm going to go to Maria, who patiently had her virtual hand up all this time. But thank you, Greg, for sharing. Maria P.
Hello there. Okay, so I'm not really so sure who I'm actually representing, probably just myself. But I am part of various groups. I'm part of a group called the 3 Million. I'm part of a group called In Limbo. I'm part of a group called Global Bradford. But this is my view, my own view. One is about history and whether it's important to remember history. And actually, yes, it is. History is really important because it repeats itself. And that is one of the things that is so talked about, how history can repeat itself and why many communities do tell their stories over and over again. And I think that is why it's really, really important. And also we can see the comparisons between what happened to some of the Eastern European communities and what's happening to people now. And we can also see quite a few of the differences as well. I mean, myself, I'm half Ukrainian, half Italian. Equally proud of both. I sort of swim somewhere in the middle. I don't kind of have either, a preference or anything. But one of the things that I fought for recently, particularly since the Brexit referendum, is actually the recognition that there were migrants in this country before Brexit even happened. And although it didn't really apply to my Ukrainian side, it was really important to my Italian side that was recognised because they were EU citizens. So we actually fought for the recognition of them already being here and already having a status and going through an immigration process. And that's where history really mattered. It actually became a political fight, as well as the moral fight as well. And it applied equally to the Polish community. There were there were Polish people who had already been through an immigration system who were now being told that they had to apply for something else when they'd already been through it and already been issued with indefinite leave to remain many years ago. So that's one point. The other point is comparisons to communities that are coming in now, arriving now. And I'm one for getting away from good immigrant, bad immigrant. We are, we come from migrant communities, and it was never going to stop with our parents. New migrant communities were always going to come. They go both ways. Human beings move. It just happens. Human beings move around, and sometimes it's political, sometimes it's what they want, sometimes people fall in love and they go to other countries, and that's what happens. And I do sometimes compare what happened to my dad to the refugee community now. It just happens to be that my dad happened to come across a legal route to come in, which led to his safety and many Ukrainians' safety. Not everybody has that legal route to come in. So sometimes they have to come in a different way for their own safety. So it's a comparison, that's another thing, And for me, one of the organisations that I sort of belong to, unfortunately, I can't devote as much time as I'd like to it, but it's Global Bradford. And that is, it came together a couple of years ago, and it was more to celebrate the migrant community together. And we organised an event, and it was brilliant. It was attended by, I don't know the exact figures, but a couple of hundred people. We had performers from all different communities, and it was amazing. And people also told us stories. So we had everything from, mixed stories like myself, and sometimes we need to celebrate. So it's remembering the history, it's coming together and celebrating.
Yes, I think
teach people.
Yeah, thank you so much, Maria. Again, you gave us really a lot. I'm gonna summarize. I think it was very striking. I don't know if anyone thought that was an interesting point about remembering the importance of telling the stories as a way of preventing history from repeating itself. Obviously, we're talking about maybe the negatives of the history. So it's important to is it important to carrying on these conversations? You're talking about the comparison between migrants, the most current generation, previous generation. Is there a comparison, or do we just need to all accept, hey, you probably, if you think you're not a migrant, you probably are if you dig, deeply enough in your family history. So may as well just get with the program. And also there's I think you touched on Brexit, the B word, but we will have it. There are different ways of enjoying, freedom to live where one wants, and some people may not have that political right or otherwise right to go and choose where they live. So it's about maybe protecting this kind of freedom of movement. But so thank you so much, Maria. Also, just to say, I can see there's a conversation popping off on the chat. We love that. We love seeing that. I can see that Sue and Her Majesty are already connecting. There's some compliments going on about the lovely lilac dress that Her Majesty is wearing. So lovely. Also, to everybody on Facebook who's watching us, I'm doing that, guys. I'm doing the direct to the camera now, so that's why I'm. So if you are watching us on Facebook, do comment and do drop your thoughts into the chat, and Lisa and Adam will bring them into the conversation. And hello back to you, Bensei, as well, if you're still watching, because you said hello on Facebook a long time ago. So these are all the things we've been talking about. We can take this conversation in whatever way we want to. So we started off, I'm just going to do a little summary. We started off talking about which parts of history and which community members, shall we say. Lisa, I'm going to come to you. I can see you've got your hand up. Whom are we putting on statues? Who should we be having on statues? Can we have a statue of a Ukrainian mill worker in Bradford? Should we campaign for that? We were talking about remembering the past. We owe this to our ancestors, or we kind of starting again, and we kind of, yes, everybody's got rich history. Let's keep going with it. Let's focus. Let's celebrate. Let's celebrate the things that we are proud of. To what extent should we be talking about the war? How important is it to kind of go back to that? Is school, is the church, are these the institutions that are, responsible for keeping up this national identity, this pride? Or you can be atheist and you can still do it if you want to. You don't have to, be part of that. You can still commemorate in your own way. Is it about a big collective history that we all have a responsibility to carry forth for future generations? Or is it about individual histories? And somewhere there, and I'll hit the button for that, is the Ukrainian lovely folk song. This is just for my own amusement. Or is it about love? In the middle of that, is it also about love? People kind of meeting, falling in love, and producing lovely people on the school. Lisa, I'm going to come to you, but I'm looking to everybody to take us in the next direction. Lisa, what's happening?
There's just been an inner comment from Facebook. Simon Cole has said, as a Northern Brit, can I just say thank you for the billions net contributions to national insurance, which can be found on the HMRC government website. And indeed, anyone putting into the pot, not just EU, and people giving in non-monetary ways too.
Okay, thank you so much for this comment to Simon Cole there on the Facebook. Can we, you know, how do we value the contribution the migrants make to this country or to any country? Can it be just monetary? In the meantime, Helena, I can see you've got your finger up, so I'll come to you. But before I do, I'm going to welcome Ihor. Ihor, am I saying your name correctly? If you unmute yourself, we will hopefully hear you. Yes?
Yes, Ihor, yes, that's correct.
Ihor, I am so glad you made it. After so many obstacles in our way, you are finally here.
I'm joining you from across the pond. Right now it's 40 in the morning for me.
Wow, okay, so you're from across the pond, I don't know why I say like pond. I think I went to New York, or I don't know, Eastern Polish, I'm not sure. And we have somebody from Canada as well. And I will just throw this out. I'm going to go to Helena. I don't know how much you picked up, Ihor, from what we were talking about. Hopefully you got my summary more or less of subject so far.
I got a little bit on Facebook. I was watching on Facebook, and then I sort of did my ablutions and whilst listening, and finally got onto Zoom.
Thank you for letting us know about what your day entailed to this moment. We're really glad to hear it, that you're all abluted now. So I will come straight to Helena, but I will also encourage people who haven't yet spoken to throw in something into the mix. And I'm talking about, oh my days, we've got a new person joining whom I can't read the name because I don't understand Cyrillic alphabet. Can you please reveal the big G on the red background? What is your name?
Vladina Yuri Salmaniov. So still George Salmaniov from Canada. I just wanted to change my name to Cyrillic.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. Did you say it's Yuri? No.
Yuri, that's correct.
Okay, Yuri, thank you so much for joining. Thank you for changing your name to Ukrainian. Is changing your name to Ukrainian important, or do we need to anglicize our names? There's just a question that popped in my head, but I'm going to go to Helena because she's been very, very patiently waiting for her turn.
As I've been listening to people making comments, and I agree with everything that's been said, and I really admire Her Majesty, because I think that is a fabulous take, where if somebody's being blamed for all that's going on in the world, they do have obviously got power. And that I thought was an excellent way of looking at it. We talk about the past. Yes, that's important. And I started off with, with perhaps a debt that we should repay. But it isn't a debt as such, it's an acknowledgement. But also my generation, who were born within the Polish or the Ukrainian or whichever community, we were almost brought up schizophrenically. We were brought up to believe and behave in a particular way within the community. There were certain expectations laid on us. And then when we went to English school and within an English community, there was a different expectation. But everybody's story, however simplistic it might appear, is important, because people who work, say, in the health service or in other places where we might have the cause to ask for help, need to be aware of the backgrounds, because they then judge people who come to them without knowing where they are from and what their experiences might be. So these stories, whether it's a Ukrainian mill worker, whether it's a Polish factory worker, whether it's somebody who worked down the mines, or somebody who actually went to university and became, the top of, their stories need to be told as well and shared, because the more we share, the more we realize how actually we might have a Cyrillic name, but the story might be very similar to somebody who doesn't, and the more we talk about it, the more we learn from each other. And that includes the British English communities. They need to be aware. The Irish came before the Central East Europeans, and the Irish sort of moved out of the communities that they would have built, hence the Catholic churches around Bradford. But the Polish and the Ukrainians settled around those. The street I grew up, every other neighbour was either Polish or Ukrainian, and I as they improved their lives, they moved out of the centres of the city into the more salubrious suburbs. And of course, our Asian friends and the Black African Caribbean communities then moved into the places that we vacated, which had previously been vacated by the Irish. So you can see that it is a continuous circle that keeps repeating itself, and we ought to be sharing that. However simplistic it might look, there is a learning situation there for all of us, but also for the community into which we've moved in. And I think people's mental health would be improved if they were understood and known, and not battling against something that people choose not to understand and acknowledge.
Thank you so very much for this. I think it's been really, really great, Helena. You brought in some new points, which I really love. It's about maybe commemorating the past, just making sure that kind of is there in people's psyche to set the context, so we don't so quickly judge others based on maybe some superficial information or assumption. And you're talking about this kind of cycle of migration kind of happens, is just a natural thing. And you're talking about Bradford being beyond the Polish, beyond the Ukrainian communities. There are people who came from the Indian subcontinent, the Caribbeans, and they're kind of filling in those areas and previously Irish, so it's like a constant flux. So I think that's a really good point. I will also say at this point, I probably should have said it earlier, but some of you have already sent us some photos, and what you may be seeing behind me, are the photos. You may recognize some of your photos, I don't know, because Laura is kind of working tirelessly, just throwing these visualizations there. I think one of the things that we discovered through doing Destination Bradford, this is almost like an advert break that I'm doing right now. You know, what we discovered is that people have a lot of personal archives, and of course we've got some kind of artifacts there behind me. People may recognize what they are. We can talk about traditions later. So one of the things we're trying to do with the Destination Bradford project is trying to see what's in people's archives. And we had some archives shared with us by a local journalist as well about other stuff, but maybe people can bring that in, because obviously I can't bring anything into this conversation. I'm merely reflecting what you guys are saying. So big maybe round of applause for the visualizations. And Carolina, if you've got anything that you want to share, we may have seen some of your visualizations already, I don't know. Have we seen them already? Okay, so when you're ready, just give me a shout that we're looking at them, so we'll give them a little framing. But yeah, so that was me. Mikey, you had your hand up for ages.
Just sort of like trying to link some of these threads together. I'm just wondering, you know, I'm actually thinking of this in Edinburgh. They've got the statue of Wojciech the Bear, and I know that's not a Polish. He was actually from Iran, funnily enough, but part of the story of the Polish wartime experience. I'm wondering, is that like a good example of remembering that Polish history, or what is the best way really to capture some of these Polish and Ukrainian stories? Is it about statues? Is it about, they also made a film about Wojciech the Bear. Is it about making films? Is it about some kind of theatrical piece or story? Or, you know, what is the best way to capture this so that people, you know, in the current era actually are aware of this history, and, you know, it is a really active part of people's imagination.
Okay, so I would even further that, is animal a good representation of a story? Does it always have to be people? Can we do it more metaphorically and that kind of stuff? But that's a very good question. How should we be remembering the stories? What, 2021, do people need more statues, or do they need more films? What do they need? I'm going to go to Ihor, then I'm going to go to Alex, because you were first and you haven't spoken for yet. Then I'm going to go to Ihor, and then I think Sue, you had your hand up. So please remind me that was the order. But Alex, I'm going to go straight to you now.
Thank you. I just kind of wanted to jump in. First, I'm just going to introduce myself, kind of like who I am. I was born in Poland. I moved to England in 2005 when my parents came here to work. I've been in England for the majority of my life. I'm 23 now. So I didn't really, well, no, I did grow up until 7 in Poland, but you know, looking back at it now, I don't remember much of it. And when I moved to England, I did go to Polish school for a couple of years, and that's where I kind of learnt the very limited amount of Polish history that I know. But you know, going to English schools all my life and kind of being like growing up in an English community, I don't know a lot about Polish history at all. The little bits that I do know are either from like GCSE history, where we learn about World War II, or things, very, very small things that I remember from when I was a child in Poland. But then kind of looking at, for example, my nephew, who is now 12, who was born in England, and you know, he's been in England all his life. He's been in Poland a couple of times on holidays and stuff, but he's never lived in Poland. He doesn't know any history at all because he's not exposed to it in any way. And you know, that it's probably like we probably could expose him to it a little bit more ourselves, kind of, you know, tell him stories that we know and stuff. And that is something we do, but there's only a limited amount of stuff that we can do because, you know, Polish history isn't on the GCSE history curriculum in England. We don't learn it in mainstream schools here. So the only way that we can really, you know, teach younger generations, like myself and like my nephew, the Polish history is genuinely just through word of mouth. We pass on history by talking about it.
Thank you so much, Alex. I think I'm going to kind of pick up from what you're saying, maybe link it with a little bit what Helena was saying earlier. Is it about this kind of, you know, are we kind of growing almost like schizophrenic? Like, I'm a bit Polish, but I'm British. I know a bit of history, but I don't know so much. And then the next generation completely is growing up without that knowledge. And my question would be, whose responsibility is it to pass on this history? You know, should we put Ukrainian and Polish onto the British curriculum? Should there be other nationalities reflected in the curriculum? These are just some of the questions. I'm going to go to Ihor, but I'm also seeing that Roman, you've got your hand up as well. So I'm going to come to you after Ihor, Sue, and then I'll come to you. Ihor, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I've been sort of waiting for something like this for more than a decade. And I'll tell you where I'm coming from. I'm now living and have been living I came to Canada as a grad student in '77. And although for the first couple of years I was on a student visa, so I had to go back to Bradford every summer. Basically since the '80s, I've lived here. So I'm coming from this, not only from a bifurcated kind of schizophrenic point of view with Bradford being Ukrainian and English, but also with a Canadian overlay of all of this. And what the Canadian overlay has done is quite recently, the Canadian government has kind of tried to make amends for a lot of the discrimination, I guess, that has been caused in the past. And I think one of the problems is that the stories that my generation had of discrimination have never been told. I guess what we call here WASPs, white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, their feet have never been put to the metal, to the burner here for this. And I think maybe by telling our own stories, we can acknowledge some of this. And this didn't hit me until I attended in 1999 in Britain, the European Conference on Educational Research, where I met Ghazal Abati. And she just published a book about Asian children at home and at school. And she had taught in Bradford. And when we began to exchange narratives of her time in Bradford schools and my experiences, and her experiences as an Asian teacher and a teacher of Asians, she was surprised to hear from me that those experiences were not unique to Asians, but had occurred to other non-visible minorities. In other words, I grew up white but other in Bradford. So my plea, I guess, is that these stories need to be told whilst the people are around who can still tell them. For example, things like, well, we talked about, there was the Queen on. I managed to catch her on Facebook. As part of my research, when I was researching for this paper that I wrote, because I took a course on people and place as part of my doctoral studies, there was an article in a medical journal about mental health in the Polish community. But what I realized was that to the Brits, the Ukrainians were Poles, because they were most of the Ukrainians in Bradford came from Western Ukraine, which was under Polish rule at the time. So on paper, administratively, they were classified as Poles. And so to the Brits, this was just simply, they just simply lumped everybody together and didn't differentiate between who was a Ukrainian and who was a Pole. So those kinds of things need to be told. Also, I know, having grown up in Lum Lane or just off Lum Lane, I know that before we bought a Ukrainian club, there were some of the bars or the pubs in that area that our parents would go to. And I've always had this wonder, did they actually start their own social club because they were not welcome in the British pubs? I've heard stories here from people who came to Vancouver after the war, the same generation as my parents, when they were riding on the transit, on the bus system of Vancouver and talking amongst themselves in Ukrainian, they were told, speak white, by the other people on the bus. So those are sort of some of the wonders that I've had. Myself, I even had the situation where when I got my first job, I was going to be teaching just outside Derby. The headmaster of the school said, well, Mr. Crook, maybe you'd like to change your name. And I'm thinking, what difficulty does he have with 4 letters? And I said, my response was, well, Mr. So-and-so, if that's the way you feel, I'm not sure I want the job. Oh, no, I was just joking. I'm sure he wasn't. And that was one of the reasons that made me actually come to Canada. And when I did come to Canada, what was interesting was people of my parents' generation, they were fully accepted into society here, even though it was a British part of the British Commonwealth, the British colony. The Canadians somehow looked differently upon anybody who was not who had immigrated here, to the point where one of my father's contemporaries, who was part of a nationalist movement, had actually been sent by the Canadian government the year before to negotiate on behalf of the Canadian government with the government in Poland. And yet he'd been born in Poland under Polish rule and came here and made a career and was fully accepted into the Canadian civil service. I was told that I couldn't dream of a career in the British civil service because I had no grandparents that could prove that they were born in Britain. So those kinds of things that were happening to us, the sort of systemized roadblocks, let's put it that way, need to be talked about, I guess, and need to be acknowledged and dealt with in some way, shape or form. Anyway, I've said enough for the time being and let others speak.
I think what you've given us here, I'm going to give you a round of applause. Helena is doing her own round of applause there. And I know we've got Sue and Roman who want to chip in, but I'm just going to pick out the main threads. I mean, you gave us a lot, but I think you're talking about the similarities of the experience of white other, the invisible migrants, versus those more visible, maybe of Asian descent, and how many of these stories are kind of overlapping. You're kind of bringing in this whole thing about changing the name. I mean, maybe said in jest. Should we take offense at that? Should we just relax about it? Or is there an underlying double agenda? Are Brits as open-minded as we think they are? They think they are. I mean, actually, they're Brits on this call. Maybe is Britain as open-minded and maybe as many as maybe Canada? Is there more to to process? Is there a way to go for Britain? Are you experiencing any blocks in being accepted in society? You touched on the looks and this kind of, one's heritage determining what path they will take in their life and kind of limiting those options. These are some of the questions. Sue, I'm going to come to you if what you had to say was relevant, and then Roman, and then Maria, I think I can see you've got your hand up there.
I think I can remember what I was going to say. I've been a bit blown away by Ivor's. I've been making notes like mad. Mind's racing. I think what I was going to say was in a response about how do we capture these histories and these stories. I'm also a storyteller, children's storyteller mostly, and I'm also an advisory teacher for an education charity based in Bradford called the Linking Network, which is all about breaking down barriers and creating connections and building stronger communities across socioeconomic groups, but also across cultural groups. And what works best, I have found, obviously, because it's it's a direction I went in many years ago, storytelling with young children. And if I could, rather than sort of overloading an already very loaded curriculum necessarily to start with, and actually that curriculum not always being terribly accessible to all children, what is accessible to every child, if you do it in the right way, of course, is story. And you can start, I've worked with babies, telling stories with babies, there's evidence that you can tell the same book to a child in the womb and it recognizes it when it's born. I mean, there's a massive evidence. It's a very profound tool. And if I could wave a magic wand, I would create a resource for all the schools in Britain, and they would have a team of storytellers, oral storytellers, who would go out and learn people's stories. They go the old tradition of story, not write it down, because that's a barrier for lots of people. Learn oral stories, perform them, prop them, whatever their style is, and that would be a resource for the country to use. Every school would have their own, ideally. It's kind of like a human library of stories, and start using those stories maybe in assemblies, but in carpet times, if anybody's a teacher out there, you know what I mean. And it would just be such a solid part of every child's experience, from the minute they start at a play group to the end of their formal education. And they would just take it for granted that that's how it happened.
That's
how
amazing.
They learned about the world and learn about other people, and that's what I do.
I think this is amazing. I didn't know about reading, about the stories told to children in the room. I think that's a really interesting one. I really love the idea of the oral stories, maybe not written down ones. It's about the kind of craft and performance, and that kind of the whole experience of it. Not putting any more barriers, and also Ukrainian and Polish stories in every school in UK. How about that? Maybe we can roll this out. Maybe we can start to hear. There's a lot of agreement on this. Thank you so much. I will just say we're going to go to Roman next, and I would just say, because I know the Queen of Yorkshire herself was here, but she had gone, and I will just tell you, if you guys need to pop off at any point, you're welcome to do it. You can drop in and out, that's not a problem, but if you do, let us know, because we'll come to you for your final thoughts. Don't leave us here just on our own. But I'm going to go. Don't leave without saying goodbye. Is the rule. Okay, thank you, Sue. I'm going to go to Roman. Roman, patiently waiting for so long. What have you got for us?
Thank you very much for having me. I think it's all of our responsibility to really examine our culture and to transfer it to other people in British society. I'm a little bit worried about the Polish lady who was speaking earlier and saying that she hasn't got the will or the ability or the knowledge to pass on some of the Polish history that she came here very young. I mean, there are a lot of sources, English sources. Norman Davis' Path of Hope, which is about the Anders Army and their journey from Persia to the UK. That's a fantastic book that I would recommend to everybody. Some great work by Lawrence Rees, an English historian, about the Ukrainian famine and the problems that the Ukrainian community had in terms of the Stalinist era. All these things can be meshed together and brought together. And I think that in the British history curriculum, especially at GCSE and at A-level, there should be much more of a contained subject around the history, not only of East European, but of Black, Asian and other communities within the UK, the actual difference that they made to the lives of the UK and its citizens and society. That should be a subject in its own right. It should really be educated. The thing that's come to the fore now is the sort of culture wars that we're experiencing in our society, where, we're having statues of slave traders thrown into docks and things like that. People are getting very angry about it, but actually what a lot of people don't know is the history behind it. And the history behind it is very, very potent. And we should all know about that. And we should pass that on to our children and to everybody else. I think we should have institute of remembrance or cultural remembrance from the, for the various cultural societies within Bradford to come together, have some sort of a museum or a cultural centre where, all of our cultures can be celebrated.
Yeah.
I know there's a Katyn memorial at the Polish church in Bradford where Polish officers were killed in the war by the Russians. So that's one monument, but it's attached to the church. There are no specific monuments or remembrance issues around what happened to our communities in the war and before that. And I think there should be. I think there should be some streets, for example, but after Polish or Ukrainian sort of heroes and indeed significant people, so that people will know. Unfortunately, I think, the way society is going and the sort of culture wars that are happening now, we're becoming quite divided, and I think we should come together much, much more. And I think something like an Institute of Remembrance or some sort of cross-cultural institute within Bradford would be a great idea as a starting point.
Okay, so not a big one. Jenny from Bradford Producing Hub, if we could just use some of the funding to create an institute of remembrance, that would be really nice. But I think what you're saying there, Roman, I think there's a lot in there. The history, the Polish and Ukrainian history has been described and told by various scholars and historians, even the British or English speaking, shall we say. Let's put it on the curriculums. No, let's even do one further than that. Let's name streets after the kind of important people from the communities. But who would they be? Can we agree? Or is the society just too divided? Like you said, the culture wars, people kind of latch onto the statues and the kind of one, maybe not the full story behind the some of the figures represented in the statues. How do we bring the community closer together? Is there a more contemporary way of doing this Remembrance Institute in Bradford? Could that be maybe a social media TikTok platform? I don't know. Could we teach history for TikTok? I probably shouldn't have thrown that into the middle. No one mentioned TikTok, but I'm just trying to kind of see, big books, big history. What about people busy with their lives? The current generation. What is the route into the generation? And I will just bring in one more thing from somebody who said earlier. There's a time ticking. There's a clock ticking on how many stories we have available from the people who are still around, who can tell us firsthand their memories and their histories. Are we doing enough? Are we capturing enough? Should we be naming the streets after them? How about Maria Danielczuk Street in Bradford? Would we like that, for instance? And I will just mention one last thing before I go to you, Maria P, with your hand there, and then have Sana as well. Thank you so much for joining. This is Talkaoke. It's a little bit crazy like this right now. I'm not going to recap right at this second, but welcome. I will just say we've got a very special treat because we've got two people plonked in the middle of the very Ukrainian club itself. That's Catherine and Narisha, who are just like, oh yeah, she's never going to come to us. No, she's forgotten. I haven't forgotten. I have not forgotten. And just prepare yourselves mentally because the girls are going to give us a bit of a tour of the Ukrainian club, and maybe we can spotlight you later. But if you've got something to throw in as well, just from you, anything that made you think or tick or any questions, pop that in, and that goes also to anybody who hasn't spoken. But we're on fire here, but I will shut up. I'm going to go straight to Maria. What's happening here? Yes, it's mind-blowing. That's the mind-blowing sound effect. And thank you, just sorry, Maria, loads of conversations on the chat. I can't read them all because I'm not very good at multitasking, but if anybody wants to kind of get the highlights and throw them in and record them for the posterity for our Talkaoke podcast, please do it. And people on Facebook, keep comments coming. Thank you, Simon. You've got loads to say on Facebook. Bring that on. I am shutting up. Over to you, Maria P.
I thought I was.
Yeah, Maria D. Okay, jump in. Yes, go, Maria D.
I thought, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. Just a few points. Well, two that Roman just mentioned. Education. Now, we took it was GCE when we were younger, and all of my generation who went to Ukrainian school would have taken the GCE, and it then became the GCSE. So our children started taking that, but then for some reason they stopped it in 1997, and so we were at the point, well, it just wasn't fair. Why can't the next generation do it? But they said there weren't enough and funding and everything, so they cut it off, which was a blow really to the community, because it meant that my daughter could take it, but my son, who's 2 years younger, he missed out because by that time they'd taken it off the curriculum. We couldn't do it, so a lot of a lot missed out on that. And no matter how we tried, the head of the school then, he's passed away now, Bogdan Svrid, we did so much campaigning to try and get it back, and no matter what we did, and yet so many other languages were left that could do the GCSE, but they took the Ukrainian off, and we've got, big communities all over. So that was that. And then talking about statues, that Roman, would we actually be allowed to put anything up in Bradford? The Ukrainian community have got a statue in London at Holland Park, and I think that took a lot of campaigning to do. It's of Volodymyr Veliki, who brought Christianity to Ukraine, and that is on the main road. And we had a big celebration when that was unveiled, and I think that did a lot for the community. The fact that we've got our own statue in London, but would we be allowed to have anything up here? We don't know. The other thing that Ihor commented on, so I'm cutting things short. I've got family in Canada, and when I went over as an 18-year-old in the 70s, there was an exhibition in Castle Oma down in Toronto, and one section was of Ukrainian kings and rulers, and I was astounded that in the 70s there was something about sort of Ukraine for everybody to see, because here, when we were going to school in Bradford, nobody knew about us. If you mentioned the word Ukraine, where's that? Your friends would say, no, where's Ukraine? And they just lumped you in as being a Russian. And I know my daughter's grammar school, because of her name, Danilchuk, she just had a group of boys, but she's very resilient, who'd always said, oh, you're Russian and whatever. And so, it wasn't hard. It wasn't easy for us, I think, sometimes going through school when you couldn't really prove your identity. So just those points I wanted to raise.
I think these are really good points. I mean, I'm picking up from what you were saying. It's something about, funding. Do we actually physically, stories are fantastic, the ideas are fantastic, but do we need funding to create a statue? Do we need to lobby more? Are the Polish and Ukrainian communities, are they as strong? Could they be stronger? Could we connect a bit more to campaign for those things? Are there really less Ukrainians now of second, third generation who are engaging with their heritage in the sense of a Ukrainian school? Is the British government right? Sorry, there's not enough of you because we just don't know where you are. How do we kind of galvanize this? What seems to me like a lot of interest and a need for having these things kind of happening. I'm going to go to Maria P. Thank you, Maria P, for being so patient. Everyone's been so patient. Thanks for that, guys.
Hi there. Okay, so I want to touch on a few things that people have spoken about. One of them I was really interested in what Ihor was saying and around Ukrainians being given the wrong identity. Actually, Maria's mentioned it as well, about being called Russian, being called Polish. And that happened to me so many times during my childhood. You know, you'd say to people, I'm half Ukrainian. Well, what is that? You know, where's that from? You know, what are you? So that's one thing. But again, from a point of view of documents and history, I've got my dad's old passports and old documents from when he came, the old police booklet that people used to get, and the confusion that's arisen, you know, here. So in one passport, he's got his town and then Poland, and then that's crossed out in biro and Ukraine written across the top. His police booklet has got Ukrainian, that's crossed out and it says uncertain across the top. I mean, this would have been a nightmare if we'd have had to sort this out nowadays. One's just got his town and no country, you know, and it's that, you know, and identity matters and getting things right matters, and they've mattered so much now that, you know, everybody is being judged about, you know, around where they're from and what status they've got. So yeah, that was really interesting about what identity means to you personally, but also what it means to you legally. You know, what's written in your passport's important, and yet they were crossing things out and putting Polish, Ukrainian, you know, whatever. I know there was a lot of confusion around that area of Ukraine, but yeah, my dad always identified as Ukrainian, and that's what he was. So that was one point. And yeah, it's very, very apparent is that in the actual documentation that they had. The other one was, again, around being the invisible other. And that's actually happened to me. So when I've stood at Global Bradford, for example, and I told my story, and part of my story was one of the old neighbours telling her daughter not to play with me. And the main reason was because we were foreign and we were strange and people didn't really know much about us at the time. And a lot of people there who were not white were really astounded, actually, that had happened to me. You know, they couldn't believe it. And yet it did happen to us. You know, we did have things like that happening to us. The neighbours, when we were moving in, we actually became really close, really good friends with the neighbours. We were like a family in the end, you know, but when we were moving in, they admitted to us they were really worried about us moving in. And this is back in the, you know, early 70s. They were worried because they knew nothing about us. We were strange, we were weird, we cooked with garlic, you know, we grew vegetables in our garden, which people never did, you know, really, we must have seemed really weird. But yeah, they grew to like us, and actually they realised that we weren't a threat to anybody and we were nice. And, you know, my mum made jam and she shared it round, and, you know, and we were okay. But it took, you know, it was the, you know, the immediate thoughts that people had. Yeah. And the other one that I wanted to touch on was the blame game. So who gets the blame? And you can see through history how different communities have got the blame for everything. So it may be in the Caribbean community, it may be in the Asian community. At the moment, it seems to have been the EU community. Everybody is going through on refugee. Everybody's going through that turn. The Irish community took their turn, and this is what I said about history. History repeats itself. It will come around. Somebody else will get the blame next. And yeah, those were the main things I wanted to talk about. And the human library has been talked about as well before. really good idea. I think stories are important. I think they're more important than statues. Statues are a snippet in time. Stories are living. They carry on. They move on.
I find what you're saying like really like metaphysically really compelling. The stories are just point in time, they're just like small things, but stories live on, which is quite a bonkers idea when you think about a statues made of, you know, those kind of heavy materials that's supposed to, you know, but I think maybe it is about this kind of ephemeral, the story, the thing that you can't really quantify. Maybe that's how we remember better. I personally relate a lot to the garlic discrimination. Sometimes I do cook with a lot of garlic, which is known in the people speak. They do know it. They do know when I cook with garlic, and I will die in a ditch for that vegetable because I think it's crucial for my identity. Yeah, see what I mean? It's daily on daily basis. Thank you so much, Maria. Alex, I'm going to come straight to you because you were very patient.
Hi. Okay. I just wanted to kind of expand on the idea of identity and you know, being foreign in Britain, in Bradford, in West Yorkshire. A lot of the time, especially being someone who was kind of born in Poland and then, you know, plucked from Poland without kind of my decision. I didn't have a say in it. I was kind of plucked from one culture and just thrown straight into another. Over kind of the years leading up to now, I had a lot of issues, which I know quite a lot of my Polish peers will relate to, where when we're in a setting with Polish people, for example, my family and my family friends, I often don't feel Polish enough to consider myself Polish, but when I'm around English people, I'm not English enough to be English. So kind of that I think is something that quite a few Eastern European people, specifically people my age who came to England when I came to England, I think that's something that a lot of people can relate to, but also kind of expanding on what Maria said about the white other and the discrimination that Eastern European people can face on a daily basis. I think the 2004-2005 boom of Polish immigrants also kind of in turn caused a boom of scapegoating and discrimination towards people of Polish descent or of Eastern European descent. And I think because we're white, a lot of it got pushed to the side, especially from my experience when I was in high school by teachers. I experienced quite a lot of xenophobia, quite a lot of racism. You know, it was quite a daily thing for people to tell me that my parents stole their parents' jobs, or my parents are like stealing space and stealing community or whatever. But when I went to teachers about it, you know, because it's bullying, it's discrimination, you want to go tell someone about it because you don't want to be experiencing it. When I'd go to teachers about it, they'd be like, "Oh, you can't experience racism because you're white. It's not discrimination. You're white. You're not experiencing this." And I think because it didn't get taken seriously, I think that's so damaging. Firstly, to you know, to the adult that's speaking it, but for a child to be hearing that, I think that's ridiculous. But yeah, no, I think I made the point now.
No, thank you so much, Alex. Thank you for sharing that. I think you know, your experience about experiencing, you know, experience of experiencing. Sorry, I'm just like getting in a knot here. You know, sharing your experience of being maybe discriminated against for being white other. Does racism apply to people who are white? And also, what it is about, you know, this maybe people have this notion of people moving freely, freedom of movement, but actually you as a child, you're plucked in from one environment to another, that, you know, that kind of caused a reaction in you. I mean, what about that? I mean, this is happening to other young people as well. And also, is this something, are you Polish enough? Are you English enough? What are you actually? Are you born here? What passport do you have? Is this something that is just typical of the current generation, Alex's generation? Is that something that you've experienced being from different generations? Does it matter? These are all the questions on the table. I will go to Halina Halfai. I really love that name, Halfai.
It's Halina again, yeah.
Hi, Halina.
There's been a lot of talk about identity, and I was born and grew up in Bradford, and I was quite happy being Italian, Polish, and going to English school. It didn't affect me. Where I really felt it was when I left Bradford, and I've lived abroad for almost 30 years. I'm now back in England, but I lived in many countries, and that's when I felt that I didn't really know who I was anymore. Because when people ask, well, what is your nationality? I'd say, well, I'm partly Polish and partly Italian, but I've lived in England. And that's when I realized that people sort of looked at me thinking, well, what exactly are you? And I felt confused in myself, even though I'm very proud of my heritage, but it's difficult to explain that to others. And I just want to mention that I know what my parents went through, what immigrants go through, because I was a foreigner living in these different countries, and especially when I lived in Egypt, you can imagine a sort of more of a Middle Eastern mentality there. But they did have a great big immigration situation in the early 1900s, because they had Greeks coming in, Italians, and especially the Armenians, who had, of course, come over from their diaspora. So they made their home there. They were part of Egypt. They built up, contributed to those countries. But what I found that the second generation were being obliterated. People didn't want to know their stories. And especially the gentleman who was talking about, who is in Canada, he will know that in the 1960s, the majority of the Armenians from Lebanon, Syria, Egypt moved over to Canada. They immigrated there. So what I'm trying to say is very, very difficult to find your identity when you are so mixed, even though we are so proud of it. And another point, when you're talking about statues, I don't think that will work, because people have become too sensitive with statues, but maybe a plaque, a street name. But I was thinking also of the Polish cemetery, because when I returned to England and I went to visit my parents' grave, it was very emotional. But maybe something there, because we have the Polish and the Ukrainian and also some of the Italian graves there. Maybe a monument there would be appropriate. But also going around the cemetery, I was very emotional, because I thought, this is my past, this is my history. I was looking at the names on those tombstones and thinking back, that was a teacher at the school, that was my dance teacher, that was the parent of one of my colleagues. So it was very, very emotional. So we have to keep the past. It's got to be there. We have to document that. But I think we have to move on, because that's what life is about. We talk about our generation also, what we contributed, and what the next generation is going to contribute.
That's an amazing point, Halina. Thank you so much for sharing. So it's kind of talking about kind of the real kind of experience of seeing the history almost kind of coming to an end with the lives of the people that were part of your life, and kind of seeing that vividly there in the cemetery. Maybe that is the place where we should be, you know, driving people to kind of feel that connection to where they're from. I'm also interested, just, you know, personally in, you know, what is this kind of Middle Eastern attitude to migration? I mean, can Britain learn something from their point of view? And that whole confusion around identity, I think, Ihor, I'll just took a little bit, like a little scan of what you said on the chat. You had the opposite situation where people called you Canadian, which you found confusing because you were brought up Ukrainian. So, you know, like but what I'm picking up from all of this is that identity is a very delicate thing, but it's not a broad strokes kind of affair. It's you know, it's more nuanced than that. I'll come to you, Mikey, shortly, but I think, Carolina, you had your hand up, didn't you? Let's go over to you. And just before we do, sorry, I'm just kind of picking up bits and pieces from the chat, and I know, Simon, you commenting on Facebook, you're throwing in, among other things, class. Is class, because Britain's got a lot of kind of conversation about working class, middle class, all that kind of stuff. Does class go into the conversation about migration? are we as migrants part of a class? Is that important? Ties in with the earlier conversation, the factory, the mill workers versus maybe more prominent figures in local history. I will leave you with that, and I'm going to go to Carolina. Sorry, you can unmute yourself.
So I was just thinking about the identity as well, again, and because I'm third generation Polish, and I think I'm so tied in with all the Polish community and the things that I've grown up around. I feel more Polish, like because of I went to Polish school, I did Polish dancing, and like I've learned the language. So I think it's what you're surrounded with, like that, and how you've grown up. That's how you feel, I guess, is like your identity. And yeah, I think people do like question like who you are, and like because I've got such a Yorkshire accent, they do ask, like they say like, so you're not really Polish, are you? Or then some people like, oh, were you born there? So it's like you're always pulled apart from different ends, and you don't really know where you fit in. But I think I taught I did teach Polish dancing 2 years ago at Bradford. And I was just thinking about what Alex said, and I was just thinking it'd be really nice, because I think when I might have been at the school the same time as you, I'm not sure. Like, did you go to Bradford Polish School? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there was like a bit of a divide, because when like the new migrants came over, I felt like in the school I don't know, I just feel like some people knew how to speak Polish and then we just didn't. I think what would have been really nice is if they actually the teachers did more to like bring us together, maybe, instead of like, and then we would have had these conversations as like younger children, and it would have been really nice.
That's really amazing. Thank you so much, Carolina, for all this input. I mean, you threw in quite a lot of stuff, and yeah, maybe that's a conversation. Okay, maybe it hasn't happened in schools. Maybe we, in different points of our lives, we would have wished for this kind of conversation to happen, but yet here we are now talking about all of this stuff. So, is it about preserving this kind of, I don't know, this group, this forum? Should we grow it as well? Should we do a Talkaoke and incorporate dance into it? You're laughing, but we have done it. So just to kind of say, but I will just, I'll pick up on this point of dancing. I don't know. I don't know that for sure, but I've got a feeling there are a couple of people on this call who have been involved in Ukrainian dancing here and there. I mean, is this correct? Are there any kind of dance teachers, dance people on the call? Maria Lee, no way. Tell us about it.
Oh, you're on mute.
I started dancing when I was 11 at school. I did ballet at St. Joseph's College in Bradford. And then I got asked to do Ukrainian dancing and ballet with Ostap Buryak. He used to have the ballet studio opposite the Polish church. So he asked me to go to the studio to do ballet. And then I went to the Ukrainian dance group called Kralachi. And on here as well, we've got Arisha Chimera. Maria Danilchuk danced with me. And then my daughter, Catherine, is now teaching dancing at the Ukrainian club with me. I teach the younger children and she teaches the older children. Oh, not children, the older.
Right, so dance, I mean, so dance is a form of kind of expression, but I mean, did you feel that is a way in which you are honoring the heritage? Is that a way of kind of cultivating a culture? I mean, what did other people think about it? Did you have people in your school going like, oh, what a strange dance, what are you doing? What were their reactions?
Not really. I think people used to think that we were so exuberant and loved our dancing, and we actually danced. Our Kralachi dancers danced all over England. We've been on TV, as the picture depicts behind you. We've been on Opportunity Knocks. We've been on Come Dancing, and we've been on, I can't even remember the children's program that we used to be on. Pardon? Showtime. Junior Showtime. Junior Showtime, that's right. So we did that as well. Thank you.
Okay, so people, I mean, anybody here who remembers these programs? I have learned about them from Maria. I mean, do you remember sitting there just watching TV and suddenly seeing a Ukrainian dance group? Does anybody actually remember that? It's a punt. I mean, I don't know, people might. Helena, you've got your finger up. I must come to you. Please speak.
Just like the Ukrainian community, we've had Polish dance group right from the 1940s in various forms. And Halina Fi, who is on the panel here today, she and I danced together in a dance group, and she commented that we miss those days. So like the Ukrainian community, I danced since being a child at Polish school, age 5, in various guises. And like the Ukrainian club, you know, the dance group has been on Come Dancing in its previous form, not the modern version, on television. You know, the Polish community in the 90s, I restarted a group for dancers called Hotski Klotski. And it was interesting to see how the little ones reacted, because we had 200 at one stage. And obviously, while they were practicing, they were in all their PE gear, you know, sort of casual clothes. But then we'd say, right, you're going to put your costumes on, we're going into Lister Park, we're going to do this. Oh, I can't possibly do that. They're going to laugh at me. They're going to, you know, I'm not wearing that. Anyway, with persuasion, they did, and we took part in Bradford Festival. We won the float competition, and we were in the park, and people started coming up to the young children and saying, oh my goodness, aren't you wonderful? Isn't this beautiful? And it actually gave the third generation, you know, my children's a positive vibe about being of Polish heritage. And so again, like the Polish community, we've been on television, the Easter and Christmas traditions have been featured on BBC Look North, you know, so, but this is what I say, it's all flash in the pan, it's there, but it's not sustained, it's not a regular thing. And as far as identity is concerned, I know this is when I was working in Bradford, I often said that our generation who were born to Polish parents, you know, we had no choice where we were born, but our identity is equally as mixed up as Alex was talking about. When I went to Poland in the 90s on a teaching trip, I was going around various educational institutions when I was a teacher, and I was speaking to Polish teachers, talking about the English style of education, etc. And I remember, you know, being brought up in the Polish community in Bradford, being told that I was Polish, and until they died, we would be Polish. And yet I never had a Polish passport, it was always British. But going to Poland, I was introduced as, we have an Angelka here. So I sort of looked round to think, oh, who else is here? And of course, it was me they were talking about, because to the Poles in Poland, I'm English. You know, so this fluctuating and ambivalence towards identity, it isn't just the new generation that arrived from 2004. Some of us have experienced that, you know, from the 1940s and 50s.
Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff. Again, identity is ever so complex, ever so confusing sometimes, and it's also, we kind of find out about our identity almost from other people. Almost other people tell us what we are, and then we're kind of left with this, okay, and what do I think about it kind of stuff. And we've got some dance groups kind of behind me on the screen, just over there. I'm kind of looking, you don't know this, but I'm looking to a green screen. There's nothing on it when I turn around, but obviously when I look on the screen, there's everything on it. And the costume, I really like this idea of, you know, yeah, theatrical costumes, but they do bring this kind of extra boost of confidence and pride to young people who do dress up in those things. I think maybe we've got some Hotski Klotski alumni on this call. maybe, I'm not sure, who may want to throw something in. Yes, thank you, it's a mystery. But these are all the things. I mean, as one of the outcomes of Project Bradford, Destination Bradford, should we start a dance group? Who's in? I mean, just a show of hands, who'd be interested in doing some Polish dancing? I know I would. I don't know if we can do it on Zoom, because Bradford, London may be a bit hard to do, or Canada, but, you know, we could have a little one of them. Actually, I just want to use this opportunity with this music to bring in Orysia and Catherine, because I just want you, because also, guys, time check, we've got last 20 minutes, so if you haven't spoken, please make sure that you speak at some point. But I would just like to say, Orysia and Catherine, would you show us little bits of the Ukrainian club? Like, a few minutes of like the best of the Ukrainian club. What is going on there? Reporting live.
Yeah, sorry we haven't spoken much, because we were just repeating things that we've already said, because in agreement with everything yesterday. But as a show of appreciation for what our parents did on the day here, Second World War refugees, not knowing the language and regarded as aliens, but they did so much for our community and for the diversity of Bradford. They added so much that they came here hardworking, did the jobs in the mills that nobody else wanted to do. They were envied for that. Represented the fact that said they were taking their jobs. They were just hardworking and wanted to make a better future for themselves and for their children. And we're currently in the second Ukrainian community centre. The first one they had was on Claremont, which is near Bradford University. They outgrew those premises and wanted larger premises. But that's a view of the grounds, which we'll sort of take you into shortly. This is the main bar area. This property is actually on Legram's Lane. It was a wool merchant's property. Sort of one family lived here on the road. So once it was bought, a lot of conversion went in, and it was all done manually by the Ukrainian, our parents' generation.
I think the signal had run out, but hopefully they'll come back on. Just a kind of quick interlude. I don't know if people, I mean, I've been to a Polish club in London. It's a big Polish club there. They've got an identical carpet. What's with that? I mean, coincidence? Who knows? And they also have a central bar. In fact, in Polish, I don't mean to we've got more bars, but there are, I think, 3 bars in one building. Whatever. What do I know about that? But just kind of saying. But so maybe we'll come back to Orysia and Catherine very soon. I mean, anybody's been to this club? Does that kind of evoke any memories? Mikey, you wanted to say something, or?
I just want to quickly pop in this question, because I think we talked a lot about the suffering and and all these identity issues and not being accepted and the terrible things that happen in the war. But I think there's the other side, which, the fun side, the dancing, the culture, the poppy seed cake, for example.
Your favourite.
And there's that side of the culture as well, which is a much more kind of fun side. And I think one of the things about what happened in 2004 onwards is the whole narrative of people coming from Eastern Europe was all really, really negative, and there was no real attempt to embrace the cultural side of the fun and the dancing. And unless you sort of got involved with those people, you never ever, if you were not from that area, you wouldn't find out about these things. So I think it's that is talking about hidden history. That's also hidden history.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, what do we think about this idea of yes, there's the history, yes, there are things which are heavy parts of the past, but what about this, almost integration, but in a kind of more, celebratory kind of way? I mean, is that is that also a way to kind of bring the communities together? Is this a way to celebrate? Maria P, you've got your hand up, and Sue, you also have your hand up, but I want to give a chance to Yuri, to Stephanie, to the mysterious iPhone, whom I just actually don't know who that is. I don't know if anybody knows. And anyone else, and maybe Chris, you haven't spoken for a while, and whoever else who haven't spoken yet, and Nina, you haven't spoken for a while. Is there anything that you guys want to kind of bring in? Because I just want to make sure that everybody's got something that they kind of put in. It could be about the drinking, the dancing, the carpet in the Ukrainian club, if you want. It could be about history, statues, commemoration, destination Bradford. What should that be? A massive dance club, maybe? Dance float, maybe? Chris, you've got your hand up. Thank you. What have you got for us?
Well, it's just a quick point, really, because you know, I sort of, as I got, I used to dance a little bit with Hotski Klotski when I was at Polish school. Never made very seriously, and I can't remember if it was with you, Helena, but it's all a bit blurry back then. But like later on in life, I started playing in bands and playing music, and we ended up doing a lot of sort of nights at the Polish club in on Edmund Street in Bradford, and yeah, that whole nexus of Little Horton is sort of in my head, sort of like the central point for my experience of the Polish community in Bradford. And I mean, the only thing I just wanted to add quickly that sort of that place closed down because it got shut down because of serving underage drinkers. And at that point, it was very multicultural, and there was, I mean, people. It wasn't the people who were going to those club nights weren't just Polish by any means. It was just people interested in music in Bradford, and yeah, that I think is quite nice as a sort of counterpoint to this sort of traditionalist kind of like Polish dancing thing that was going on as well, which I happen to also be interested in from a sort of detached place now, having studied sort of ethnomusicology, and I can listen to it and I love it, but I'd feel very self-conscious trying to dance it, but I'm up for it.
Thank you, Chris. I think if this project, if at the end of the Talkaoke we form a band, we know who we go to for the music and for the solo performance in the first kind of dance piece. So thank you for volunteering yourself in. But it's an interesting point that you made about, you know, yes, it was a Polish club, but the music was actually a thing that brought people together from, you know, all corners of different communities, people who loved music, and that was the reason why they were there. And I think you're kind of touching on something, you know, yes, there's the identity, the different things that kind of distinguish us from the other communities and other people, but there are things that we have in common, and those are brilliant things as well. Meanwhile, we've got Catherine joining back with Orissia. By the way, girls, just to say, we absolutely loved your reportage. I mean, I loved it, and I think the kind of consensus is it was really great. We kind of run out of the internet there. It could be like, I don't know, some kind of, I hope nobody's trying to shut us down. I'm sure it's not the case, but do continue for a little bit if you can.
I did want to apologise because one of my reservations about being here and walking around was that we would lose connection because it's a big old building and Wi-Fi is not the best in the world. And we did our best, but we lost you as we were going through to the main hall, which is a shame because we have got a really big function hall, sort of insured for capacity of 400 people.
Wow.
And was widely used in the early 80s. It was built in 80, I think. And we used to have some really big there where it was standing room only. And as somebody's already mentioned, what used to be the Captive Nations Committee, anti-Bolshevik bloc of nations were formed, and they used to have regulars here. So it was all the Eastern European countries, Central European countries used to get together annually, which is a big event. And worth considering again in the future if people dance groups, orchestras, whatever it is. We had all of them, dance groups, orchestras, choirs, everything in its heyday. All thanks to the hard work of our parents who culture and tradition were so important. They wanted them carrying on through future generations, and we're doing our best, but it is very hard because a lot of people have moved out of Bradford for work. People's interests have diversified. It makes it a lot of people are torn in all sorts of different directions, but the centre is still here. And we're doing our best to encourage people to use it, and hopefully after lockdown, we've been closed for a year now, but once we come out of lockdown, let's hope that people continue to want to explore their roots and here to find what they can. So other than this main building, we have the hall that was built on. We do have a separate building for the Ukrainian school, which Maria Danchuk has already told you about. We also have a Ukrainian library, which we sort of had to tidy out of that before lockdown last year. It's other than London, we're probably the only Ukrainian community throughout the UK that does house such a library. And we've had people from Ukraine coming over and commenting of how unique it is and how some of the books there are just unbelievable that we have got those books there. So we very sort of welcome people with open arms that want to come here once we reopen, make use of the facility. We've got lovely grounds. We're hoping that once lockdown finishes, we can make use of the fact that we've got a beer garden. So
say no more there, Alicia. I think I was already sold, but now I'm really sold. It's a question: what beers should we be stocking in the Ukrainian club? I mean, are we, is it about craft beer or is it about, traditional drinks? But what you're saying, I think is really remarkable. I know, we're running out of time, but it has been really wonderful. But I'm just going to recap. I mean, it's a really impressive building, and like you're saying, it's got all these different possible functions in it, and it's got the library. And I know I'm not supposed to share any opinions in the middle, but during the researching for this project, you kind of very quickly realize there are some source materials only in Ukrainian, only in Polish, or only in English, and sometimes this history ever so slightly differs. So I think having resources that are available, maybe across languages, that I think that may be an interesting thing. I'm very interested in the library. I may pop down when it's possible. And also, since you sold your venue so well, maybe we should somehow try to do something in the Ukrainian club with Destination Bradford show. Maria Lee is giving us thumbs up, and Helena's shaking her head positively, thumbs up. So, yes.
Can I just add that you mentioned what sort of beer, craft beer. We do try and we've had a beer festival for the last 7 years, I believe.
Of course you did. Amazing.
Weekend in November this year. We are hoping that the beer festival can come back with lots of craft beers from Ukraine and other Eastern European countries. So keep looking out on Facebook for possibility of that being on this year.
Right, amazing. Well, if people have got any ideas what beers they would like to see in the Ukrainian club or as a part of a festival, please do. Guys, what I will do though, this is like a harsh reality right now. We've got 7 minutes, and we will go and do final thoughts, which means say anything new thing that popped to your mind, anything old that kind of, pick up from any point of this conversation, anything that you want to leave us with. What should we do next? Are you proud to be Polish, Ukrainian, British, anything? And I'm going to come to Helena because I think she may just pop out of the screen if I don't come to her. So kick us off, Helena, with final thoughts.
Well, there's been talk about plaques and roads, street names and statues. And can I read something? And this is from Bradford Council.
Yes.
As part of the Monuments Review Action Plan, to ensure the Council's policies in relation to commissioning new statues and monuments, and for agreeing street names and building names, and in other ways in which the public realm commemorates individuals and communities, is diverse and inclusive. This penny is compiling a list of potential nominees from the diverse communities. Please could you let me know of any individuals from Bradford's Polish or wider Eastern community you think should go on the list? This could be people who are still alive or have now passed away. It doesn't have to be someone who has reached the heights of an impressive career or made vast fortunes of money, but can also be someone who has worked quietly to contribute to the people and places of Bradford district. Their name and few details about their contribution would be good. Please could you let me have any names by Wednesday the 24th? So can I, if I pass this email on, would you be willing to pass it on to the people who are present here? And please get in touch with Penny and, you know, put your, so Bradford Council is actually trying to do something, because I know it was somebody from the Ukrainian community who would do it, and would they be interested? Well, whether we get anything, that is another story, but at least they have made those first steps. And it's up to us now to take that forward, because if we don't, we have no excuse for saying nobody listens and nobody takes any attention.
I think it's an excellent idea, and thank you so much, Helena, for reading this out. I think, you know, this would be a really great, and you got a thumbs up there from you. No, that's you, Yuri. Yuri, I'm going to call you Yuri, but I just don't. Yeah, Yurik. Yeah. So yes. People, what we can do, definitely, Helena, if you send me this thing, I will email everybody who attended today and those who couldn't make it with this appeal. And people, remember 24th of March, you need to let us know who should be included in this big thing. So I will do this after this event. So thank you so much, Helena. Get your thoughts going. I will also mention, remember on the 21st of March on Sunday is the Census Day. So I think, yes, the thoughts, the stories, but let's make sure that we get into, you know, those areas where we can make influence. Okay, yeah, it's not about my final thoughts. Okay, thank you, Helena. Who's next? Chris, you had your hand up. I'm going to go straight to you. Final thoughts.
Yeah, my final thoughts. I've just noticed that no one had really mentioned food, and I just think it's an obvious thing, isn't it? And I was really loved seeing the brief glimpses of the Ukrainian club, and it just reminded me of the SPK in Bradford, which was like served a similar function for the Polish community, and it had a beautiful garden. It was amazing. But what I really remember is the little cafe. And you could go get pierogi, and you know, since then there's been a couple of restaurants in Bradford, but you know, I think they're really important, and that's something that's accessible to everyone. You don't have to speak a language. You just go eat some pierogi, and you either like it or you don't like it, but you experience it, and that's a really wonderful thing. So yeah, that's my.
I thought it was just a matter of time when somebody brings in pierogi, and I'm glad you did. It was your prerogative to do so. Sorry, I was waiting for this one. This was lined up. Thank you, Chris. Yes, food. Okay, who's next? Who's next? Who had the hand up? Maria Lee, please take it away.
Just to say, during the beer festival, we do sell pierogies. We do sell other things. And kubasar and everything. So there we are. Come to the Ukrainian club in Bradford.
Thank you. We will be there the minute the lockdown kind of ends. I will be there for all of these treats. Is that your final thoughts, Maria? Is there anything else you want to throw in on the back of this conversation?
No, we're still going to hope to start dancing again as soon as lockdown goes. So
amazing.
And concerts, we'll still be doing our concerts.
Yes, more of concerts, more of dancing. Thank you, Maria. Okay, 2 minutes left. I'm surprised that football didn't come up. We had a sound effect lined up for football. Anyway, wasted that. No worries. Karolinka, next one comes from you.
I dance in Huddersfield, Polish dancing. So if anyone wants to come to Dożynki, you're more than welcome. So it's for everybody.
Excellent. I will just say at this point what Karolina said is Dożynki, and I would just like to shout out our live captioners there, Laura and Louise, who I'm sure they're doing absolutely fantastic there with the captions, but some of the Polish words, I mean, girls, don't worry about it. They are hard words. Dożynki, I would not expect you how to spell it. But Karolina, if you want to throw it into the chat and explain what that is, please do. And yes, we would love to go and see you dancing in Huddersfield. Okay, final thoughts? Anyone? Throw it in. Adam, you can say something as well, if you want.
I just want to say, it's a bit hokey, but thank you so much to everyone who's attended this call and everyone who's shared the stories with us over the past however many months it's been. Like you say, this is such a vibrant community and there are so many stories. I think Margot and I didn't actually realise how many there were, and we are only kind of scratching the surface at the moment. So thank you so much. And you've got our contact details now, so if you have any other stories or anyone you think it would be good for us to speak to, please send them our way, because we'd love to hear from them. But just thank you all again so much for attending today. It's been fantastic.
Thank you, Adam. Bring those stories, guys. You've got the email, any photos as well. Any other final thoughts, or shall I just do the final kind of... I'm going to do the final kind of then, if you're not going to speak anymore. But I just want to say just final thank you to everybody who joined, just echo what Adam was saying. Big thank you to people whom we spoke to before, who have galvanized other people to come to this call. Thank you to people who shared their photos. Thank you, Helena, Maria, Catherine. I would like to say thank you to Tim Smith, who's a photographer and lent us some of the photos. He couldn't make it today. He's working. Chris, if you're watching, Tim, if you're watching it now, thank you for the photos and the projects you've done, and thank you to Emma Clayton also, who's a local editor. Helena knows her. Emma wrote a beautiful piece about the Polish Anna. I'm a bit sad Polish Anna didn't quite make it to the conversation today. Thank you, Chris, for sharing the photo. You can tell us in the chat who this was. And I want to say thank you again to Louise and Laura for the subtitling. Thank you so much, girls. You're doing an amazing job. And thank you to Bradford Producing Hub team. Thank you to Jenny, and thank you to Lisa and Ezekiel, who are helping us to get the word out, spread it out. And thanks to them, we can make this project happen. So thank you for supporting this. And gosh, what's next? And thank you to the people speak, to our fantastic illustrator, Laura, and all the beautiful illustrations behind me. We will upload them to our website so you can scroll through them. And thank you to Rick for making all the cables work, and to Mikey on the sound effect, and thank you to Karolina for doing the beautiful visualizations as well. We'll see them maybe later. And thank you to to everyone else. And I just want to say, if you want to follow the project, you know where we are. You've got our email addresses. Send people to us. Go to Bradford Producing Hub website, BD Producing Hub, for information about the project. Tell us what we should do next. Should we do another Talkaoke? Should we do a dance group? Should we do a show? Live stories? I'm done here, guys. I've said enough. Thank you so much to everybody for joining, and have a wonderful day. And thank you so much for sharing all this time with us. Mikey, what song are we playing out now? I think this is perfect. This is Hey Falcons, Hey Sokoły. Maybe some people know this track. So in a true Cossack, Polish, Bradfordian way, I wave you goodbye. Thank you so much, everybody. And thank you to everybody on Facebook and on all the social media.